That's the doorbell at Jimmy's house. Now, when you come to my house, my doorbell sounds like this.
Hey, you're listening to People's Radio United Weekly Show. I'm Tim Best Buzz. I'm here with Gear and Nolan Hack and Canadian Glen. How are you guys doing?
Pretty good, thanks.
I'm alive.
I'm doing all right. Thanks for having me, Tim, as always.
Cool. So real quick, let's just go over whatever anyone wants to announce or talk about their upcoming shows or what they're working on real quick, and then we'll get started. Today's show, we're going to be talking about mainly all Native issues. So yeah, anybody have anything they want to talk about, their upcoming shows or any activism they're working on?
I'll just say, first off, to Charlene Lyle's family, my condolences and prayers to them. They can't even enter the house because it's a crime scene, so the kids don't have their own clothes or toys or anything. And also, I am putting together, as I said a couple of shows ago, something anti-Trump, anti-ignorance, anti-racism, and definitely it's a nationwide thing, and we can use all hands on deck. So if you're interested to be going on nationwide this fall, email me at nolanawhack@gmail.com, NOLANAWHACK@gmail.com, or on Twitter at NolanHack.
We don't plan on Top Gear Live. You know that. I have no idea what's going on Sunday. Tune in. You'll find out when we find out. Sunday's 9 GT.
Well, you see, that's a real good method for anticipation advertising.
That's
we don't know. Yeah, we don't know what's happening, so show up and find out. That's a good method. I like that.
Thanks, Glenn. What do you got going on? I know you always got something cool going on. What do you have going on?
Well, I'm still kind of on a radio hangover from last Wednesday, but I think next week will be just back to the old usual Canadian politics. We have an issue here in one province that is exactly like the election situation in the United Kingdom, just, about 1/10 the size. But it's the same bullshit, the same lies, the same backroom dealing. The public says, you didn't win, go away. But yet, that former government insists that they're still the government. Oh, no, we'll change, honest. Sure you will.
Good God.
Well, cool. Let's get into the show. I guess when Top's ready, we'll add him. So yeah, I guess since we're talking about Native issues, Nolan has worked on a lot of Native issues. Why am I getting feedback? Is somebody's speaker on? No? Okay. That sounds better. Yeah, so Nolan works on tons of Native issues. He stood out in front of Washington, D.C. for, 30 days, Nolan?
About close to 60. It was about 2 months.
2 months for Leonard Peltier. And he just tirelessly works on Native issues. And Gear being a Native woman herself, I guess you guys could start it off.
Well, Gear, I'll defer to you to start us off here.
You guys got the list. We have a list of 4 or 5 different things we were going to go over, right?
Indeed.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
cool.
I mean, there's some big news out of the No Dapple situation.
Yes.
I don't know if you guys remember Free Red Fawn. She was the water protector who was accused of shooting at law enforcement officers. She's been released to a halfway house, so we've got a little good news there. She's not in jail anymore. That's all the news I have. It's a really, really horrible situation. She's been an activist for a very long time. She's been working very hard, and she gets put in jail on trumped-up charges, and now they've effectively silenced her. And this is a tactic they've used in Indian country for a very long time. Just look at Leonard Peltier, who was part of AIM. If you want more information on that, I would suggest watching Incident at Oglala, which is on Netflix, about an hour and a half, very in-depth, and it'll tell you all you need to know about Leonard Peltier. So that's good news. Red Fawn is in a halfway house. She's not in jail. We've got some forward motion there. But there's just so much that DAPL has their hands in. I know that when they hired Tiger Swan, we've really seen a lot of the really, really awful and terrifying things they did. They were really monitoring not just the camp, but Facebook and social media, and watching people in particular. We see that they were watching like different individuals, and now they're going to Louisiana, I think, because there's another pipeline, the Bridge Bayou pipeline, that is going to connect to the Bakken, which connects to the DAPL, so that the shale can go into the Gulf of Louisiana as well. So this thing is far more encompassing than we initially knew, I guess.
Well, yeah, the whole thing is. I may say the same thing with my own folks, black folks. It's so damn normal. It's just. I was saying yesterday, I was kind of like, where's the off button? Like, do we get a break? Can you give us a week off? And the thing that worries me so much about Native people is, black people have a voice. Native people don't.
No, we don't.
Yeah. And black people contribute to that erasure all over the country. I was looking up how many black players there were on Washington's football team. The R word is as bad as the N word, yet Washington continues to have that name and mascot. There's 46 black players that signed voluntarily to Washington, because in football you can get drafted or traded. So 46 black people voluntarily have signed to play with the native equivalent of the New York Niggers.
Yeah.
And that erasure of Native people is one reason why no DAPL is a thing, or excuse me, the Dakota Access Pipeline is a thing, why Leonard Peltier is going to die in jail, why Red Fawn is in a halfway house. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. It's heartbreaking, but you could either lay down or fight, and I definitely choose to fight and help you guys as much as I can.
And I appreciate that. We need all the allies we can get, but Native issues are very tricky. They're incredibly tricky. And here's the thing that I need you to know. I am a mixed-blood Indigenous woman. I am enrolled in a nation, and I only speak for myself. Not my nation, not my clan, not my tribe, myself. That's how Native people operate. So my views are mine alone, and other Native people may not share my views. And that's okay. But I just need to put that out there, because that's how we operate. It's like, that's our thing. So with that being said, there's a lot of historical trauma from the underlying genocide that was inflicted upon us. Not only did we have, Manifest Destiny, which contributed greatly to our genocide by saying that settlers have a right by God to be here and to push forward as far as they could, all the way to the Pacific Ocean, with no regard for the indigenous inhabitants of this land. But it also sets us up for marginalization by putting us on reservations, assimilating us through boarding schools, that kind of thing. And that historical trauma stays with you through the generations, especially as an Indigenous person from Turtle Island. I mean, there's no pain like that. It's a different kind of pain. There's pain in other issues as well. I'm not trying to detract from that pain, but this is a unique kind of pain. Because not only are they saying, you people weren't always here with their land bridge theory bullshit and all this other nonsense, but they're also actively trying to kill us with blood quantum, and that's my opinion. A lot of other natives don't agree. They believe in the blood quantum system, but if you don't know what blood quantum is, it's basically saying that there's no other race of people on Earth that have to prove by blood that they are a specific race. We have to. You have to have a certain amount of blood quantum in you in order to be a native person. And on one hand, I get that, because we want to insulate ourselves from being overrun by non-natives because we want to protect our culture. And a lot of people don't agree with that, but that's what we want to do. We want to protect our culture. But at the same time, are we going to die out because of these practices? Because we're not accepting the mixed bloods into our rank? There's a lot of real tricky situations that you don't have in other nations and other races.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of those issues, they're just as prevalent, not that they've disappeared in Canada, but, you know, you talk about the blood quantum, and it exists in Canada as well. I mean, it was established to try and limit the responsibility of the Canadian federal government through the Crown Treaty system. But what's happening in Canada is the fastest growing demographic are Indigenous people. And it's been that way for 20 years now. So there's a lot more recently in Canada that has shifted away from the continuous method of isolation and trying to take away as much as they can. What's happened in Canada is, with the birth rate that is 5 to 6 times higher than settlers in Canada, leaving out first generation and new immigration, just settlers against Indigenous persons, their birth rate is about 6 times that of settlers in Canada. So this is changing the composition of the 150-year war that's been going on here. And I have to mention that's another big issue with Canada, because on July 1st, Canada is 150 years old. And our government is spending somewhere around $400 million to spread their propaganda for this year. And there is a very large counter program going on against celebrating the majesty of Canada at 150. And most of the effort and visibility behind that is coming from First Nations, from Inuit, from Métis. And it's being used as, this is the perfect opportunity to get it out there to not just Canadians, but internationally, because this will be international news. When Canada turns 150, oh, gee, good old Canada. Oh, yeah, they're so friendly, they're so this, they're so that. Well, settlers in Canada are just as guilty as settlers in New Zealand, the United States, Brazil, everywhere where Indigenous people have been pushed to the point of no longer existing. So that's a counter program that's happening in Canada, and that's what I'm watching, and that's what I'm trying to help.
That's really awesome. Those are all good things to hear. And, I can see that there's an Indigenous, Aboriginal, First Nations resurrection in Canada because there's great media coming out of Canada. FNX is amazing. Not only that, but you've got great shows like Blackstone that came out of Canada. There's really good Native media that addresses our issues in a way that doesn't mascotize or cartoonize us. And I think that's so very important. Representation is really, really important. We see ourselves on the screen and we're like, holy shit, people look like me,
Yep.
That's my culture on the television screen. That means a lot, especially to me as a Native woman. It's meant a lot because I don't see that a lot except Buffy St. Marie on Sesame Street, which is amazing. And Buffy is amazing. She's an amazing human being. I know her, and she is an amazing human being, but she's just one person. And that's kind of what Sherman Alexie was just talking about. He's a Native author from the Coeur d'Alene tribe. And he's just saying that there's got to be other Native writers out there. I'm bearing this burden. Come on, step up, do this, write, help me spread this message. And I think that's important too. We've got to encourage our young people to be creative and get the story out in different ways. Film, radio, television, books.
Oh, definitely. I mean, that's another thing that's changed in Canada too. We have the APTN, Aboriginal People's Television Network. And I'll tell you what, they do some of the best goddamn news reporting that there is out there.
They are really great. I've seen them on the FNX's First Nations Network. And that's a really good one too. I get it here all day on my public radio or my public television channel, and it's got like the creative Native who does little craft projects, but it's narrated in Cree or Ojibwe or whatever, it's really cool.
Yeah.
So I see that there's a resurrection of language, and there's a lot of really positive things going on ever since I started working with this movement back in the late 80s, early 90s, back when we were protesting the, incarceration of Leonard Peltier. And these things, like, when I hear that we've got the next generation standing in front of the White House for 2 months and there's still no forward action, I mean, it kind of makes you want to give up at times. It really does. It's a long, hard fight, especially just fighting for existence every day. I mean, I still experience racism very, very often, especially if I wear my braids and feathers. People call me Chief, which is like, what year is this? What the, are you kidding me? But it happens all the time.
Well, that, as you said, I lost count when I was in D.C., and I was there. I got there right before the National Day of Mourning, a.k.a. Thanksgiving, and our work was done there on the night of the 18th when President Tom, or a.k.a. President Obama, denied Peltier's clemency. And I lost count of the times people, especially non-natives, came up to me, called me, emailed me, said, I'd love to help. How do I help? Where do I go? It's like, well, you can come here to the White House. We're doing this every day. You can donate. You can write Leonard. You can do this. You can do that. And even Howard University, which is supposed to be like the best black college in America, definitely at least one of the best, we contacted everybody under the sun we could find leading up to this. And Howard was one of those folks. And we must have emailed and called about 5 of their student groups, student bodies. We only got one response, and it was a no thank you. It was like 3 sentences, like, we will not be taking part in this event or whatever they said. And when I left, I realized at the end of that, more people knew my name than Leonard Peltier. And that made me want to jump out a window.
Exactly.
Because that's not why I went there. I could care less about myself. This is about us and I say us as colored people in this country, especially black people and Native people, because no two people have been hit harder.
No, absolutely not. And no two groups get killed by the police more often than not.
And I will say, this has to be said over and over because no one knows or listens. Native people are killed by the cops and targeted by the cops at a higher rate than any other race in the United States and Canada. And that's what's really annoying. And I have my work would be a lot easier if I just focused on my own people, like most black activists do. But I'm called, traitor or someone who's belittling our plight, which all I'm doing is I'm trying to shine a light on another plight, which is very similar to ours, happened in the same century, started in the same century, the 15th century, and has continued to this very day. And I was talking to a brother who went to UCLA. My dad also went to UCLA, so they kind of intersected and they met. They've been lifelong friends. And I told them they let us live. That's the main difference between Native and Black people in this country. We've been through unspeakable hell and still are, but our population didn't get cut by 98%. And that's one thing that people have just forgotten, not understood, failed to recognize, or simply don't care. But you're talking about over 100 million people and counting.
Yeah.
Native people murdered due to colonialism. And if I may, because just like all the Native genocide, nobody knows anything about it. I'd like to read just a little bit of the Papal Bull explaining how we got to this point. In 1452, Pope Nicholas V issued to King Alonso V of Portugal the bull Romanus Pontifex, declaring war against all non-Christians throughout the world and specifically sanctioning and promoting the conquest, colonization, and exploitation of non-Christian nations and their territories. Columbus in 1492 set sail for his nonsense with the express understanding that he was authorized to take possession of any lands he discovered that were not under the domination of Christian rulers. He and the Spanish sovereigns of Aragon and Castile were following an already well-established tradition of discovery and conquest. So, for people who don't know, that is the Papal Bull, that is the doctrine of discovery, which gave by the Pope and the Catholic Church gave license to white people to say, hey, anywhere there are colored people and or non-Christians, you can do whatever you want to them, wherever, whenever. And that's still going. I mean, Philando Castile, Alton Sterling, Zachary Bearheels, Jacqueline Sailors, just you name it, Renee Davis, Charlene Lyles, it just goes on and on and on. And I'll add this one thing. The word war was mentioned in Canada, like a 150-year war. I take exception to when people say that Native people and Black people are at war or have been at war. This is a genocide. This is a double genocide. I don't remember anybody saying that Jewish people were at war with the Nazis. They were under a genocide. A war would mean we're fighting back with arms in large numbers, when in fact we're being executed in front of our children while pregnant. And that's Renee Davis, Jacqueline Sailors, and Charlene Lyles, two Native women and a Black woman, all pregnant at the time with children at home, murdered by Washington State Police within the last year.
And oh boy, is Washington State racist? Holy shit. I have never been so frightened in my life, Native person, than when I was in Washington. That's where I got my bachelor's degree in Native Studies, as a matter of fact, in Washington State. There are over 50 recognized tribes in Washington, and they don't like us very much. We went to we were suing. The Quinault Nation, I believe, was suing for crabbing rights. They were suing because we had treaties that specifically stated we had rights to crab on this particular area, and we went to support the tribe. There was me, another very noticeably Native woman who was pregnant, and then 2 lighter natives who weren't noticeably Native. But we were the only other Native people in the room. It was a room full of 400 very angry crabbers. They would not give up their seat for that pregnant woman. I mean, it was that, I mean, the room, the tension was so... When we walked out, they surrounded us, they heckled us, they screamed at us, just because of the color of my skin. I didn't say a word in there. I just sat there. I could have been on their side for all they knew.
Oh, but you couldn't be because you didn't look like them.
Exactly.
Yep.
Well, when people say there are progressive states in the United States, I laugh. There are no progressive states. There are more progressive states than others. But, I mean, you have 50 racist states in the United States. End of story. You know, I live in California. I've lived in California my whole life. I live in Southern California. You know, colored people all over the place. Los Angeles is Mexico. And still racist as hell. LAPD is, they get off on killing us. Our kids, our mothers, our fathers. I think that the ignorance and the wolf of ignorance is so harmful, and more so to Native people than anybody. And what has ruined TV and media for me is just that. I mean, I'll watch a show that I love or a movie that I like, and boom, there's racism. Like there's a show I like called Happy Endings that was on for like 3 seasons on ABC, and Megan Mullally comes in and says, "A hawk is my spirit animal." I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? Like, how many times have Native people said, "Don't do that. That's actually sacred to us. Don't do that. Don't do that."
That only applies to certain nations anyway. Like, seriously, that is like one nation. So the thing that people need to understand about Native culture is that we're not a monolith. We're not all Lakota. And not everybody who says they're Cherokee is a white person. So there's that, too. You know, I feel like my nation, I'm Eastern Cherokee. I'm Bird Clan from Tennessee. I know my lineage. I know my ancestors. We didn't go on the Trail of Tears, so we weren't on the Dawes Rolls. I'm also Algonquin, Muskogee Creek, and Chickasaw, plus Dutch Irish. So I'm a whole mess of stuff. But what is presented in me is Native American. It's very obvious. My brother is a white kid. So what the hell is that about, right? But my very first experience with racism was at a very, very young age. I lived very close to the reservation most of my life. And I remember this older white boy spitting on me for an hour, calling me a dirty little Indian slut and all kinds of horrible names. I was 9 years old. And I got spit on by a 13, 14-year-old white boy for an hour because I'm Indian. And people tell me I don't experience racism. I'm like, oh, really?
Man, yeah. That my first was not my first, but I just remember this one. This sticks out. I was about 9 in a Taco Bell in Redondo Beach, California, where I grew up. I lived about like 2-3 blocks from the beach. Beautiful community, mostly white people. But I'm in the Taco Bell, and I'm in line, and this white lady, probably like 45 years old, looks at me like I'm from the planet Niggersaurus. Like I'm not supposed to be there, and I should go back to the planet I came from. This is white people land, and I'm impeding on it. And it took me a couple seconds to kind of have my senses reload. I was like, whoa. I didn't fully understand what was going on. I was like, wait a minute, she doesn't like me. And it's because of my skin color and because I'm black. And I'm half white. I'm the type of half white black person where my skin is dark enough where 9 times out of 10 you know I'm black. The only other ones are like, oh, are you Mexican? You're Puerto Rican? And that, like you said, the being mixed, and that's a whole. And we don't have a blood quantum problem with us. We have other problems in that area, but it makes things that much more complicated.
Oh yeah.
And that's the whole point of colonialism. To give us a limitless amount of problems, just endless amount of problems. So we're always reactive and not proactive. If we keep, and I say this all the time, if we keep being reactive, we are never going to get out of this.
And I think that's all we're doing, because, I mean, it's a constant assailant upon your senses. You know, people getting killed left and right, and you're like, this isn't fucking normal, dude. This is wrong. So you become reactive, and you become despondent. You know, I've gone through the whole up and down phases of activism. I'm 43. I've been through this for a long, long time. I started this when I was like 15 years old because I was spit on when I was 9, you know? You're forced into it when you're brown a lot of times. I don't know if you guys feel the same way, but...
Well, I will say it shouldn't be normal, but it is normal. And I implore colored people, especially our two people, to understand that this is very normal. As hard as that is to grasp, we have to understand that this is normal. This is done by the state. This has been done by the state since day one, or then before that, you know, the colonists. Because if we keep thinking this is a surprise, we're going to be, oh, well, geez. Well, hopefully that doesn't happen again. But it's going to happen again. It's going to happen today. It's going to happen tomorrow. It's going to happen next week. And even if you took away all the murders, all the executions, we're both still under genocide. We're both still under a horrible reality. And I mean, both of our children are targeted. Our living spaces are targeted. Well, our living spaces were created and then targeted, the hoods and the reservations. And you guys used to be under all 5 definitions of genocide. The 5, that I just pulled it up here, so I got the correct point for point. The 5 definitions of genocide under the UN: killing members of a group. They've been doing that the whole time. Causing serious bodily or mental harm to members of the group. They've been doing that the whole time, the both of us. Deliberately inflicting upon the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part. They've been doing that to both of us the whole time. Imposing measures intended to prevent births within the group.
Forced sterilizations, you name it, you know.
George H. Walker Bush with the Family Planning Act, which forcibly sterilized over 3,000 Native women, and forcibly transferring children of the group to another group, which
Forced
to this
adoption
day,
still happens. We still fight for our kids. They won't place our kids with Native people. They place them with non-Native people because Native people are dangerous.
And there was a little girl last year by the name of Kira Friedman. She's 2 years old, Native girl. And her grandmother pleaded for her to be put with the native family. But they didn't listen to her. And she was placed with the 2 white parents who were dangerous drug addicts. And because of her, Kira's new foster father, Kira died.
I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah. And this is not abnormal.
It's really not. And there's a lot of stories you don't hear about. You know, like, Native people don't want to talk about it outside their circles either. They're very private. So there's a lot of stories you don't hear about unless there's some serious righteous anger. You know, there's a lot of crazy stuff that goes on, and it's really screwed up. There's tons of missing and murdered Indigenous women, but we don't talk about that when we talk about trafficking and sex crimes and all these things. You know, we don't talk about Native women in that context, but we talk about every other race of woman. Why is that? And they're the most exploited. Look at Canada. Canadian Glen can speak to this, I'm sure. I don't know if he's still there.
Oh, yeah, I'm here.
Oh, good. I didn't know if you popped off to get a drink or something. But, yeah, I mean, there's so many missing and murdered Indigenous women, and it just seems like that's the last group of people that anybody on the planet gives a shit about.
Well, I mean, that's also by design, you know. The missing and murdered Indigenous women problem in Canada has been around since the 80s. And there are specific regions, areas, where the number of deaths is a lot higher than others. Over the years, we've had police forces exposed in every level of the court system of doing what they call moonlight tours, where they will simply pick up natives on the streets in the cities and drive them out of town and throw them out. And it doesn't matter what time of year it is, nothing of the sort. They didn't have to be doing anything. They're simply native. So we're going to drive you out of town. You're going to have to walk all the way back in. If it's minus 30, tough shit. You shouldn't have let us find you. There's been a lot of issue with how many members of law enforcement are involved with the number of murdered and missing Indigenous women and girls. There was the case of Robert Picton in the lower mainland of Vancouver, which, you know, there's a lot of people who insisted it's still not fully solved. But I mean, Robert Picton was convicted of somewhere around 60 to 80 abductions, sexual assaults, and murders on his property, a pig farm. Everybody knows what pigs will eat, which is fucking anything, including bones.
My dad has them, so watch out. Don't fuck with me.
I mean, on the Picton farm, there was DNA from something like 64 different people found in the pig pen. So, I mean, this has been going on forever. The numbers keep going up. The marches keep going up, which I attend. The public gatherings keep going up. We had a prime minister who flat out on national television, when asked about an inquiry into missing and murdered Indigenous women, sat there and looked at the country and said, frankly, it's not high on our radar. So, I mean, this is the colonial attitude in the 21st century. There's no way around that. Now, with the new government, there's been an awful lot of talk. There's been an awful lot of ceremony, but not fucking much for motion.
Oh, he's your Obama.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, absolutely.
Obama, who, you know, we all had great hopes in, but immediately realized we'd been bamboozled, heckin'.
Well, I mean, anybody who's been unfortunate enough to have any knowledge of my history on Blog Talk Radio, I was saying as soon as we had our election on October 15, that, okay, we're usually about 8 years behind the United States, so here we go. Trudeau is our Obama, and he's replacing Harper, who is our Bush. And
oh God, what's your Trump? Oh, I'm so sorry in advance, Glenn. I'm so sorry. We didn't do this.
No, there's already been a couple attempts at Trump, and we're just not willing to accept that. They've been ass kicked, and they drop out.
That's good to know. At least somebody still has sense on the planet, you know?
Kevin O'Leary was the first one to try that. And we even had a female version. We've had our own Palin named Kelly Leach. And they just have no traction. So, you know, I mean, the Americanization of your closest neighbor takes longer on some things than on others. But, I mean, you know, it's playing out exactly that way as well. I mean, Trudeau is a Canadian Obama. He talks big. He's Mr. Photo Op. Everybody wants him. He's so hot. He's got the family, all this bullshit. But nothing of consequence changes in the world. Not a goddamn thing.
Way worse, actually. You know that. We like, as far as surveillance and whatnot, we got a lot worse. And that allows Tiger Swan to do their shit, you know? Come on.
Well, I mean, the issue I'm seeing with what's come out on Tiger Swan, it's basically no different than what COINTELPRO was. It's still going.
This is what I'm happy about, is that the information has come out. Because for the longest time, we've been saying this. I was followed by the goddamn FBI for a year. Nobody believed me. I was doing some pretty radical shit in Indian country. Obviously, they were following me. You know? Come on. So when I said my phone was tapped and people were following me and all this shit and my friends were getting hit and run and whatnot, nobody believed me. But now we can say, see? They do watch us. They do watch us. We've told you that they've been doing this for years and years and years, and now we have proof, which is so beautiful.
Oh, absolutely. And like I said, it's proving that COINTELPRO has never ended.
Right. You're absolutely right. It's just, to me, like, it's personal because they did this to me as an activist. You know, and if this is the hard part, like, that didn't stop me. But I'm almost out of steam because it's just overwhelming. It's fucking overwhelming.
Yeah. I was at, I told you here last night, I was at a memorial event for Charlene Lyles in LA, and it was great. And it was black women centered as it should have been. But it sucked the life out of me. Because I was triggered probably like 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times. One time was I can't remember exactly what was said, but I met Myrtilla Jones, who's a friend of mine, who was Ayanna Jones's grandmother. Ayanna Jones is a 7-year-old black girl killed by the Detroit police about 7 or 8 years ago.
I remember that.
And yeah, cop got off twice. Still works for the police department. Anyways, I remember this moment for the rest of my life. I was on her couch in Detroit, and she said, I watched the life go out of my granddaughter's eyes. So whatever was said yesterday triggered me to think of Myrtilla having to actually witness that, and I couldn't get that image out of my head.
Oh, God.
Now, screw me. She has to see that in her head every day.
I can't.
Just see that in her head every day. Her grandbaby, her 7-year-old beautiful grandbaby, get the life taken out of her by bullets. And yeah, then I started thinking, I mean, there was talk of, I mean, they killed them and her and him and this kid and that kid. We have lost. I was just thinking of my own people because I try to put it out as much as I can that over 100 million Native people and counting have been killed since 1492. And your great Christopher Columbus, in quotes, great. My people, it's over tens of millions of people. And that counts Africa too. So
Yeah.
who knows how big the number is, but I'm just thinking, it's hard enough to remember the hashtags and the names now, just within since Mike Brown and Trayvon. That sent me in the ground. I couldn't fathom that.
And then pile on top of it 20 plus years of activism. I protested Clinton for clemency for Peltier in person, live and in face. I didn't have anything, so I used the last tube of lipstick I had and a piece of cardboard I found, because I found him, and we just mounted a spot-on rally. Bunch of Indians in Seattle, just going crazy. And he wouldn't let him out, Clinton could have given him clemency. Clinton was on his way out. He didn't give a fuck about anything.
And speaking of which, the only known protest by the FBI was done days before him leaving office. There's about 500 FBI agents outside the White House protesting to keep Peltier behind bars.
I remember that.
Yeah.
Oh,
that's not an excuse. That is not an excuse. But I'm just saying that's the lengths that they'll go to oppress us and keep us in this hell. And I'm trying to find there's a Chauncey Peltier, who I've met and worked with, of course, for Leonard, put out something the other day talking about. There it is. Okay, this was on Sunday. It's about Leonard. And quote, parole board could grant Leonard's parole at any time, but they have no intention of releasing Leonard. BOP could release Leonard for time served as he has completed fulfillment of sentencing as per laws / guidelines at the time of his conviction. BOP could at any time transfer Leonard to a lower security facility. I'd like to mention he is in max security.
Yeah,
he's a 73-year-old man who's very old. And lower security facility and medical facility. But so far, they seem intent on keeping him in max far from home, which is the Turtle Mountain Nation. And, yeah. So, I never... Gear, you've been fighting for Leonard for 20 years. I never lost sight of that when I joined the fight. I joined the fight in last summer. People have been fighting for Leonard for 40 years, and he's still in there. Mamiya Abdul-Jamal still in there.
Yeah.
Oscar Lopez finally.
For him too. Fuck. There's another one that we've been fighting for, and there's no forward motion on Mamiya.
And I think maybe underlying theme of this show is we need to accept these hard truths. And one of these hard truths is you sound like a conspiracy theorist when you say it, but you cannot have faith in this government or the Canadian government for that matter.
Oh, no, not at all. We knew that from the get-go. As a Native person, you know that from stage one, man. The treaties have all been broken, so yeah, no. Yeah. And remember, Native people weren't even citizens until the 70s. I think it was 1971. We were wards of the state, basically the bastard children of the United States government until then. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, you got your own civil right or Indian Civil Rights Act, I think in 1968. 4 years after, we got the quote unquote nigger bill. That's what LBJ called it, our Civil Rights Act. And the residential schools lasted until the 90s.
I know somebody who was in a residential school. I physically know someone in person who was in a residential school, who had his braids cut off, who was beaten for speaking Lakota. So Yeah, it's not. That's when people say, we need to get over it. It's not in the past. It's living. It's still here. It's history. The history is in our genes. The old genocide, the smallpox blankets, the manifest destiny, all that, but also the living, breathing things that are happening to us right now. Like
and you talk about the
tribes themselves digging up their own members, digging up their dead to prove that this person isn't as much Indian as the other person, so this one person, this one family can get more money. That's disgusting. That is not native. That is white culture taking over your entire tribe.
Colonized.
Yeah, completely colonized. You've been assimilated. You are now the Borg. Congratulations.
Well, we have Barack Obama, John Lewis, Maxine Waters, Barbara Lee, Kamala Harris. If I hear one more positive thing about Kamala Harris, I'm gonna just my brain is going to explode. It's like she voted for, I think it was 3, if I have my numbers correct, 3 of Trump's appointments. 3. And she's a part of this liberal resist BS. But you're absolutely right. Like even the trauma you speak of, it's intergenerational trauma. This has been proved by science that Black and Native people have trauma from birth because of all the hell that we've been through since the 15th century. And even that, and you're saying get over it. Well, wait a minute. We can get depression easier just because of our race, and you're telling us to get over it. And I have depression, so I know when someone says get over it, that actually worsens your depression or makes you get closer to depression. So that's I mean, that another hard truth. We got to do this ourselves. Now there are right allies on this show right now. Legitimate.
And that's fantastic. I welcome all of them,
Exactly.
I look at it more like, here's what I look at it more like. I look at it more like the oligarchs and the kings and monarchs and, landowning bastards. Those people haven't really changed. The structure of power really hasn't changed, and it's always been this mass oppression of people. The Irish and Italians were treated like shit. We got to remember that too, Like there was some really bad things that happened to some other people as well. They weren't treated as badly as us, but they went through some shit. So I look at it as we need to all come together as children of the rainbow or whatever you want to call it, and just as a united force against the people who are currently taking away our civil human liberties, everything that you can think of that makes you a free and independent person, they are attacking right now. And that's not cool. That can't stand. So we have to come together regardless of race,
Well, this is one of the cornerstones of this whole process. Anything to avoid people realizing that this is a class problem. As long as they can keep it focused on a race, they can marginalize it. They can criminalize it. They can make it appear to be not worthy. But, Gear, what you just said, the demonstration, the evidence is there for anybody to see. The color, the language, that changes over the years, and the level of subjugation and genocidal behavior from the state. But the bottom line is, it's all people of the same class. It's not the people running the show. It's not the people with the money. It's not the people with the power. If just everybody could suddenly realize, what? Those 300 million people in the People's Republic of China, they're getting fucked for the same reason I am over here. Because I'm not the right class to be left alone to do what I want. And look at Brazil since the World Cup and the Olympics. It's a complete basket case. Who's getting screwed there? The same thing. It's a certain class of people. So I mean, that would be utopia for me, is if disadvantaged people the world over can understand that they're all the same.
Totally agree there. Hi, it's Top.
Hi, Top.
What's that, man?
Hi, Top.
I've witnessed discrimination the world over. Go to India, the caste system. In the UK, we have the media-driven and sociological driven class system. Are you upper class? Are you middle class? Are you working class? Are you lower class? We're now even breaking that into subdivisions, which is absolutely fucking upper working class. Those that look down on the lower working class.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. It's real. And it's division, and it's caused by media and the party politic. And it doesn't do our society any good. There is violence in our society. If you're of a different class, you're of an international class, or you've come to the UK to work, you're now an immigrant, which is classed as lower than working class. But it's really fucked up, because they don't understand that the majority of people that work in our health service that keep you alive are considered actually middle class. But because they're immigrants, the media has taught you to think differently. It's a conditioning.
It absolutely is. Go ahead, sorry.
No problem. I will say that racism, classism, racism, capitalism are best friends, husband and wife, or husband, or wife and wife, longtime lovers. You can't separate the two. I mean, the same thing with sexism, transphobia, homophobia, you name it. Yes, the 1% control everything, but especially in these two countries, Canada and the United States, especially the United States, if you are not white and not a male, especially if you're not a white male, you're at an automatic disadvantage. Now you can have two white men who aren't in the 1%, and they have to deal with all this nonsense like getting health care, student loans for schools. I mean, that I'm not downgrading that at all as a problem, as saying it's just not a problem or a small problem. I'm just saying you cannot separate bigotry and capitalism, or bigotry and class. It's so intertwined. To quote Huey P. Newton, God rest his soul, we have two evils to fight: capitalism and racism. We must destroy both racism and capitalism. And speaking as myself, we can't lose sight that the two are connected.
You know what I think is the class system is like a big, giant circle. That everyone has a class system, and then within that circle, you have to look at which races are more often in the lower class of the class system, and that's where racism comes in. If a group isn't allowed to come up for certain means and has been kept down since day one, then they can't have mass numbers in a higher class group like the other races can. Because, I mean, Top said that immigrants are the lower class. If that was the case in the United States, that might be the case in the UK, but if that was the case in the United States, then the white people would be the lower class, because the natives are the ones that were here. Everyone else is an immigrant.
Yeah. Well, they don't see it that way, though. They see it as they are natives. I know. I know. And I get very upset, but they see it as they are native to this land. And I'm like, excuse you? You know. But then they excuse it by saying, well, you guys came over on the land bridge. And I'm like, Bro, there were over 1 million languages spoken on North and South America when contact happened. Do you think that just occurred overnight? Those people who went over on the land bridge would have had to have been running and procreating at the same time to have the amount of people that we had. And there's a lot of carbon dated stuff that says that we've been here for a very, very long time. So I don't buy it. The stories say we were always here. We were always here. That's just the way it is.
I've got a class system of my own, and it's discriminatory, and I make no apologies about it. I put people on different pedestals and different depths according to their humanity, their morals. Where's their moral compass? Are they scum? They can fuck off. Yeah. The dregs of society, if they have no morals, have no compassion. That's where my discrimination comes from. I don't care about colour, creed, religious beliefs, anything whatsoever. Where are your beliefs in survival for us as a species?
You're an anomaly, Top. You know
most
that.
Most people aren't in that group.
Thus is the problem right there. There's a mutual I have on Twitter, and she's very pro-native and helps with the native cause, but she's white. I didn't know she was white. She told me she was white, and I said something like, if we don't, like I said on the show, if we don't do this, we'll never get free. And it's like, well, I'm white. Well, and then I said, well, if you were the majority, we would have already been free by now. But because, as a study came out recently which polled like over 1 million people, this is about the most comprehensive studies I've ever seen. At least 67% of white America is racist. Okay.
Awesome.
So that says if you take 3 white people in front of you, 2 of them is probably racist.
Yep.
So as Martin Luther King found out later in his life, one reason why he was killed, Malcolm knew the whole time, Stokely knew the whole time, Angela knew the whole time. We cannot wait for white people. And when I say white people, I mean the majority. I don't mean individual white people. We have to do this ourselves. If white people come to our aid, great. And if they're legit, great. But
right.
We have to do this. And I also add, we have to do this together. Black people have been trying to get free on our own since we got here. Native people have been trying to keep their land and their populations since white people got here. Latinos have been trying not to get deported and keep Mexico and the whole deal for a while themselves. It just goes on and on and on.
Spanish got here.
Yeah, well, and who were white.
Yeah, and by the way, we didn't cross the border. The border crossed us. Just saying.
Yeah, there you go. Well, we Africans came over here thousands of years before any white people did, and we didn't kill y'all, and you didn't kill us, and we didn't steal your land, and we were homies and we traded. So go figure.
Yeah, right. I mean, the Vikings came over here, but they raped and pillaged like they always do. But there was a lot of them who stayed. Actually, there's been some tribes found to have Norse blood in them, which is weird. Red-haired Indians and stuff.
Well, I was to finish up the class discussion. Sorry. Oh, no problem. No.
I digress.
Something I just came across. A typical white household in the United States has 16 times the wealth of a black family, a black household. 70 home ownership rates taken 2008 survey of income and program participation. 73% of white families apparently have a home. Only 45% of black families have a home. And 47% of Latino families. And what pisses me off, like always when these polls are presented, Native people are nowhere to be found, even though this is their darn land in the first place. Go ahead.
Asian Americans are not ever to be found either.
True.
Which bothers me. That's a huge part of our population. Stop it.
Chinese people built the railroads.
Yeah, exactly. And we treated them horribly in this country.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of people who are underrepresented, and we are probably the most underrepresented.
Oh, by far. I mean,
Can I ask everyone's opinion on Barack Obama being a black man in president? Was he impeded through racism?
sure.
He didn't touch it, though. I mean, he could have done more, I think.
Well, being the only black person on the show right now, I'll take this. To quote Oliver Stone, he is a wolf in sheep's clothing. He says all the right things and does all the things of a white male president. He called us thugs in Baltimore. He signed, unlike Clinton or Bush, George W. Bush, he signed a denial to Peltier's clemency. He could have just let the time run out.
Which is what the others did.
Yeah. He decided to go, no. I don't like these people. I don't like him. F y'all. Here's a denial letter 2 days early. I was outside the White House. I went home around 7:30 each day at night, and whoever else was with me. And I'm there, and I get a message from someone who's worked with the Defense Committee. She says, "I'm so sorry. Did you hear?" I'm like, "No. What happened?" Oh, he signed the Obama signed the denial letter. I'm like, "What? That's kind of unprecedented. What are you talking? I don't believe you." Then she sends me the official thing from the Defense Committee. Then I look it up online and sees that Peltier is going to die in prison. Basically, Obama signed his death warrant.
Yeah, fucking awful.
No, he didn't let Mamiya out. He didn't. He made Chelsea Manning suffer. He continued the war in Afghanistan. I mean, just like every other president, he's horrible. He's done so many horrible things. And the thing that I gave him a pass because I bought into that. Well, no, he has to play the game to continue to actually do anything. So when he made Hillary Clinton his Secretary of State, I was like, well, I mean, that's horrible, but he's playing the game. But when he made Hillary his SOS, who thinks we are super predators and emotionally illiterate, and Joe Biden, who is one of the drafters of the crime bill, his vice president, and Rahm Emanuel, his chief of staff, which he gets off on black people getting murdered in Chicago. When he formed his original staff, that should have been all the alarms we needed. But because, go ahead.
I was just going to say it was Mr. Clinton that invoked the 3 strike rule. Also,
that was Mr. Clinton. Under Bill Clinton's administration, incarceration rates skyrocketed for black and brown people. I mean, this is Bill was a man who let millions of Africans die during his administration because he wouldn't give us it was very affordable AIDS and HIV medication. And him and Big Pharma just said, nah, I don't really care, But because we are so colonized as black people, Native people, Latinos, Chinese people, etc., in this country, black people still support the Clintons. Black people will defend the hell out of Barack Obama until the sun goes down. And we just forget all this stuff or play it off or belittle it. But that's the thing. in order for us to actually get out of this, we have to recognize this system was built for the extermination of one race. And thank God they didn't succeed, but they got close. 98% of Native people are gone. And the continued murder and enslavement and oppression of another race. And those two things have not stopped. Murders of both people have not stopped. The land grabbing of Native people has not stopped. The incarceration, the modern slavery has not stopped. The modern lynchings, whatever you want to add to that. We have to admit that the U.S. government, this system, capitalism, is toxic, is evil. And we, especially as Black people and Native people, we need to go back before we met white people. And what was our ideology, whether it be faith or politics? We need to understand what those things were and what we believed. Because speaking for my people, we had in some of our cultures, we had a male and a female god in our religions. And the female god was all powerful and equal to the male god. Now, but yet in America and colonized Africa, we treat women horribly. We treat our Black women horribly. And here on Turtle Island, Native people practice a matriarchy.
Yeah, we were matrilineal, definitely. Yeah. In fact, in my particular nation, the woman was the head of the clan, and the man she married was not part of her clan, but her children were part of her clan. The man was a part of his other clan, his own clan. But the woman and the children were part of her clan from wherever she came from. So if she came from Bird Clan, she's Bird Clan, her kids would be Bird Clan, and he would be some other clan. Which was interesting. I wanted to address Flint for a second because what's happened in Flint is a travesty. And I want to preface this by saying it. But if you look at some of the reservations, especially like in the Navajo Nation, in the Navajo Nation, they've been doing uranium mining for years and years and years, and the water hasn't been drinkable for as long as they've been mining. And no one's raised an alarm about that, which really frustrates me. But yet, I see our water protectors going to Flint, which is great because that needs to be addressed and fixed. But we need to fix our reservations as well. So I hope that somebody is working on that as well, because that's really important. This is the future of our Navajo kids, we're talking about here.
But and to add to that, the Dene Nation, Navajo Nation, the water is even worse because there was a toxic spill in the Animas River, which goes right to Dene land, is on the Dene land, and it's made the water even worse. And the EPA actually, after the spill, they sent the water in dirty oil drums, the relief water, excuse me. And it took CNN like a year to say anything about that.
Yeah.
Of course, they failed to mention the part you just said, that they've had water problems for like 70 years. And there's I think there's over 500 abandoned uranium mines on the Dene Nation. And I get in trouble, like I was saying before. I'll say, hey, Flint, Baltimore, Chicago, we don't have clean water, especially Flint. But also check out this place in the Southwest. Our Native brothers and sisters, they don't have clean water either. In fact, it's the water contamination because of the toxic spill is worse than Flint's. And there's not a word about that, like you just said. But then that goes to the whole Native erasure, which is as American as apple pie. And we, especially Black people, because it's Black Lives Matter. You know, we have a voice. We are the other side of this double genocide. We need to come to the table and meet y'all. I mean, there's so many times I've seen Native people come forward in allyship, but the numbers coming back are so much fewer and far between from our side. And it's incredible. You hear so many Black people talk about, well, the Panthers, we love the Panthers, MLK, Malcolm X. Well, the Panthers were homies with the American Indian movement.
Damn right.
Peltier works with the Black Panthers to this day. Peltier is friends with Mumia Abdul-Jamal. They write to each other. They are friends to this day. Yet, the high majority of Black people, just like every other group of people in this country, pretend Native people aren't even here, or pretend they're just, who cares? Like, we contribute to that less than human narrative.
Would you say that's an intentional direction that the government is trying to steer you guys into to keep separated?
They spent moon money. They spent Apollo mission Apollo program money to break up the Black Panthers. They spent $1 billion to break up AIM. The only reason there's a disparity there is because there's just less Native people. They've been trying. I mean, they gave us off to Native nations during slavery. Like, hey, take some slaves. And there's a myth, and we further this myth, the Black community, that most nations were like, yeah, sure, okay, we'll enslave them. Most nations are like, what's a slave?
Yeah.
That was in their
probably didn't have a word for it.
Yeah, exactly. And there were 5 tribes who did out of the majority who didn't, and yet the majority who didn't never get talked about. And you took us into your homes. I mean, and of course, then the government put a stop to that and said, what we told you they were slaves, So yeah, definitely. I mean, there's been I'm born and raised in Los Angeles, California. I live 30 minutes from downtown to this day. They've been trying to put Latino people and Black people apart for the longest time because they know how much stronger we are together. And I know it sounds cliche, but it's freaking true.
It is true.
Yeah.
The best things we ever did when I was working with AIM was with MECHA, the Mexican Student Union, as well.
I got a chicken or egg question for you guys, and the media spouts division, racial hatred, and just societal division. The politics and politicians enact that division, but they were influenced by the media. So which do you address first?
I say the politicians. That's the real problem.
Well,
I've said it more than once. The issue that we have in the 21st century is that government and media have the same bosses.
Yeah, I mean, it's the corporate lobbyists who own the networks who lobby Congress, who own the networks. It's a catch-22, man. I mean, it's just back and forth and round and round.
Yeah, that's what I was going to allude to. Because of the media and the propaganda and the education system, the way it is put out, you create politicians like Trump and Hillary, or you create people who become politicians, and then you create their followers. This is why, I mean, day after day on Twitter, for example, we have white people saying, no, you guys had slaves, so slavery was okay. And this Confederate army was fighting for states' rights. and Native people died of disease, and your immune system is so weak, and they're all alcoholics, and black people are criminals. So all of that stuff that we're taught and through the media, that to me is going to be huge into our liberation. Hopefully they come soon enough, because in order for us to get free, we have to make sure the truth is out there. Because the fact of the matter remains, white people still control this country. So we still have to, in some way, shape, or form, have us put it out on the table where they cannot deny it. They have to make a decision. They go, we want to continue this racist BS, or they go, oh my gosh, this is awful. Let's get rid of this system and this government. If this, I will remember this, what my father taught me till I'm dead, and he's taught me so much. He was a Black Panther himself. One of the turning points in the 1960s in the Civil Rights Movement was television, because white people saw what was happening to black people. Sadly, not Native people, but I digress. They saw the hoses being turned on us. They saw the dogs being sicked on us. They saw the 4 girls in the Birmingham church blown up by a bomb. They saw that stuff on the screen in moving pictures. And that's, granted, we're hardly free, but that's how we got the Civil Rights Bill, the Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act, and got our last semblances of freedom, or close, as close as we are now to it. We haven't moved any forward really since then.
I totally agree with you, and this is particularly prominent in the Middle East as well. I don't know if you guys are aware of the Qatar blockade at the moment.
Yeah.
Saudi Arabia has asked for Al Jazeera to be closed down, no less. Now, Al Jazeera actually show us images of the bombings and the carnage that occurs from not just Western intervention, but Russian intervention or white intervention, and also Saudi Arabian intervention in the Middle East. Al Jazeera are now being asked to be closed down because they show images that the BBC won't. Now, what you just mentioned about the cannons, the water cannons, and that being directed black so-called rioters, but effectively they're freedom fighters under international law. It's a media narrative being dictated by those in power again.
Exactly. If people are fickle. Most people will buy what you sell them, and that has been our problem since day one, as Black and Native people. This is why I say the term "white Jesus," because they forced their culture on us, they forced their religion on us, and when you talk about religion, they told us through brute force, worship this white man. Who was not white. That
right.
White Jesus is a fictional character. That's why I say that term. And in doing that, as small as we are when they start doing that to us, we go, wait, okay, so we're supposed to, okay, so he's God. He died for our sins. And, and then they're white too. So we're not as good as them because they have God on their side. And that he was God, he was white. So from that starting point, we're already thinking we're not good enough. And we're buying in to what they sell us. And we're buying it. Well, we need to pull ourselves up by our own bootstraps, even though they cut our legs off.
Yeah.
At birth, metaphorically.
Go
ahead.
Can I ask a question as well? And I am specifically talking about Christianity here because that's the the prevalent white political religion of choice. Now, there's many black churches throughout America, so it's like there's a caste system in religion within America.
And Native people buy into it as well. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of Christian natives, which I have always been boggled by.
So effectively, within America, you have like what's occurring in the Middle East between Shia and Sunni. You have black and white Christianity at war, effectively.
Yeah.
Yeah,
pretty much.
But but again, the problem from our side is we buy into white Christianity, and we buy what they sell, and we buy. That's why homophobia is so big in the black community. That's why sexism is so big in the black community, because white Christianity, which is not real, teaches those things, and teaches if you are not a white male, you are less than automatically. Which is why these narratives that get thrown at us of any creed in this country are so harmful. And that's why if we can come together as colored people in this country, we can change that narrative and just say, here's the truth, decide what you will. Instead of these, MSNBC, Russia, Comey, Trump, Comey, Russia, Hillary, got screwed. And then Fox News, paid protesters, Sharia law. Like, what? This isn't news. That's not news. Speak on the news. Actually speak on what is happening in the world. I remember when the laws about one of the laws regarding spying, the NSA spying on our phones and devices and whatnot, was coming up for a vote. And they were talking about it on MSNBC. And then Andrea Mitchell goes, "Oh, I'm sorry, guest. We have to go live because Justin Bieber just got arrested." What?
I've got another interesting anecdote just this very week alone. On Sunday night, a white male drove into a crowd of the Muslim faith coming out of a mosque after fasting for Ramadan. A white male drove into a crowd. Now, we've seen acts of terrorism in the UK of Muslims driving into a crowd with a hired van. Now, when every terrorist attack that's occurred on UK soil, since I can remember, the first question on our flagship broadcaster's public questionnaire show or public questioning show called Newsnight is terrorism getting out of hand? What can we do to stop terrorism? There was not one mention on Question Time on the BBC last night of the white male committing terrorism on UK soil from Sunday night. It's like the event didn't even fucking happen.
That's not shocking. That happens so very often, you know.
It does.
I'm going to have to bounce to work soon, y'all. Sorry.
Oh, good. I think we have a half hour.
Yeah, we got about
6 minutes left, anyways. That is Western media. That is Western society. We just keep.
That's a public broadcaster. Every single person that watches TV in the UK has to pay a license fee. So it's supposed to be an all-inclusive media, but there was not one mention of the terrorist attack. And just today, it was declared that this 54-year-old white male, he wasn't just a lone nut job. He's been charged with terrorism. A white male charged with terrorism. Can you believe that?
Well, it's about time. truly.
Gear, is there any, I was going to say,
That's-
since
go
Gear
ahead,
has
Tim.
to go soon, is there anything she wants to say before she goes? And then we could just go back into this until she has to leave.
Let me think. Yeah, I'd like to talk about Walker Lake. It's near and dear to my heart. It's a very small salt lake in the middle of nowhere in Nevada, but they keep trying to divert it to give water to LA, and it's going to kill the lake. And the Walker River Paiutes live there, and they've lived there for centuries and centuries. So just check out like hashtag Save Walker Lake and see if you can boost some awareness for it, because it's an important thing to the ecosystem. It's part of an ancient prehistoric lake that covered most of Nevada and part of Utah, and it's connected underground to Pyramid Lake and some other lakes, and it's got tides. It's a saltwater lake. It's 20 miles long, 5 miles wide. It has endangered creatures that live on it, and yeah, my dad tried to save it once and spent a year in jail because of that, so I'm kind of involved in this.
Well, thank you to you and your dad for trying to save this planet, well, and your people. If we would just listen to Native people who actually have been on this land for thousands of years, and things continue to be proven that y'all have tried to tell us, we'd be a lot better off.
You know, that was really the beauty of Standing Rock. There was so many tribes there, first and foremost, so we had such great unity, which we usually don't have. So there's something that's really to be said about that. Many times there's a lot of infighting in Indian country. There really is. We've had historical bitches with each other. Come on. I mean, these things go back thousands of years. So to see that was fantastic, first of all. Secondly, just kind of like what you said with the television, the internet has done for us. They saw the hoses being turned on these protesters who had their arms wide open and were in prayer. They saw rubber bullets being fired at people, and Susie losing her eye, and Sophia having her arm blown half off, and all these horrible things that are happening because these people wanted to save water. So there was a beautiful unity in that with many allies and many tribes. And the other really good thing was they saw what the police force and federal agents and law enforcement in general does to people that are indigenous who are protesting. That is not uncommon. But now we have proof that they do it, proof that they watch us and, you know, have this crazy fucking military ops place doing all these surveillance things and planning steps and whatnot. That's crazy. Over a protest, you know?
All for trying to protect your rightful land, even that was protected, at least in writing, by the U.S. government.
And how many people got charged with trespassing? That's such bullshit. Give me a break. That's their tribal land. You're trespassing. How dare you? So yeah, there's a lot of good that came out of Standing Rock, and I'm glad to see that the water protectors are still going strong. There are people all over the country still protesting at different places, and we need to keep that momentum up because there's a lot that needs to be done in Indian country. A lot. Believe me.
Mm-hmm.
The highest rate of like AIDS, diabetes. We don't process things the way that the settler body processes things. We're not used to sugar and refined flour and these kinds of things. Milk, you know. It's just not what we ate. So our bodies are getting accustomed to this new civilization, and at the same time we're not doing very well because we're ingesting the wrong things. It's time for us to go back to our traditional foods and our traditional ways as much as we can. And if you know your language, speak as much of it as you can every day because the Creator will hear you. You know, I'm not fluent, but I speak as much as I can every day. And just keep doing it, you know? Find an elder. I'm trying to find one myself to learn from. And just keep plugging along if you're out there on your own, you know. And a lot of mixed bloods are out there on their own. They aren't necessarily embraced by the culture as well. And that's a hard spot to be in, too. Because you're not within the white culture and you're not within the native culture. Both sides are pushing on you and you don't know where to go. Being a mixed blood is weird.
Yeah, well, not knowing about being native and mixed, being black and mixed is confusing enough, and we don't have a thing called blood quantum, so I empathize a little bit with you here.
And I have no idea what my blood quantum is because we don't have any papers. We don't have any, I just know where I'm from, so that's enough for me. And I turned brown as hell in the summertime. All right, guys, I'm sorry. I have to go. I do another radio show usually, and I told them I was at the doctor. I'm a terrible human.
Well, you're doing good things, so you're lying for good things. So that
Right.
The Creator, I'm sure, will forgive you.
Yeah, see you later, Gear. Have a great day.
Sorry
Thanks for all you do.
not early, guys. Have a good
Love
show.
you. See you Sunday.
Love you, Pops. See you Sunday. Bye.
Well, that, ladies and gentlemen, needs to happen more often. We need more Native people centered, especially Native women, and Two-Spirit Native people, which is, as a colonized term, LGBTQ. I've never seen, and there isn't one. I've never seen more erased people in my life. It's absolutely astounding. I mean, as a black person, I see that stuff all the time about us, but people pretend they're not even here, and I can't imagine what that would be like, because I have a lot of Native friends, and so many of them have just told me, like, yeah, this white person said, yeah, I thought you were all dead, and colored people say that to Native people too, like, I thought you guys were all dead. Like, so I can't even imagine what that.
Can I ask, what did you think of No Gapple? Because that was a pretty unprecedented event for Native Americans in the mass that they come together. It's still an ongoing situation with Dakota Access Pipeline, etc. But what was your thoughts on watching the amount of support Indigenous coming together? You were just saying that they.
Yeah, I had friends who were there. I got invited a few times. I couldn't go because of my commitment to Leonard Peltier. I mean, it is amazing. People are still they are still fighting after what a lot of people would call the end game. When the pipeline got turned on and they got moved out of there. And Black Lives Matter actually showed up there, and that was kind of unprecedented for us to, not unprecedented, but it's just been a long time for something national to happen, and for us to be there. That was huge. And
I was involved in the online campaign, and I saw the attacks that occurred against Black Lives Matter. There was a threat to the white government. I witnessed it. I saw the resources that were put into that endeavor to slam you guys down, to just disregard you, to ruin your reputations online. It was a severe military operation to bring down Black Lives Matter.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not even. I have friends in Black Lives Matter and in different sections of it. I'm not with them, but as a black activist myself, I've been followed by the FBI and police and have my phone hacked and my Twitter screwed up. I'm on a new account, my second account, which is I'm kind of lucky. Some people have like 4 or 5, but anyways, yeah, but again, that's the narrative of Western society and what is continued to be pushed by them. We're terrorists for trying to get free, but the people murdering us are the heroes. But that the narrative. Go back to the beginning. America and Canada was founded by terrorists. George Washington was not this lovely man. He was one of the worst human beings who ever lived. He killed
same as Winston Churchill.
Winston Churchill. He committed genocide in India. You can just look up quotes by him proving his racism. Of course, look up the actual genocide of Indian people. So these white saviors that even black people look up to, native people look up to, that's the narrative. So to this day, that has lasted because when that is in the DNA of the country, and especially how it was formed, and everyone buys it, well, then you're going to believe the same exact thing every time this comes up. I mean, there was a bounty on Harriet Tubman's head. It wasn't like the government was like, "We love you, Harriet. You're an American hero." Tried to kill her many times. They killed Martin Luther King and Malcolm X while they were wearing suits. Their pants were pulled down. They didn't have chains on, like the stereotypical, black troublemaker. So this has been going on forever, and it has to be upon us to change the narrative by showing the truth. But we have to come together to do that. We're too displaced as individual communities to do this alone. Because there are outlets, the Real News, Unicorn Riot, to name a couple, and of course, you guys are talking about certain native outlets here and in Canada, like FNX being one of them. But we need to ban all this stuff together, because that is our only chance. Malcolm said that. Fred Hampton was killed for doing that. There's a myth that the original Rainbow Coalition was made by Jesse Jackson. It was actually Fred Hampton, a member of the Black Panthers in Chicago. He had Native people, the Chicano movement, white Panthers on his side as allies, and they killed him. He was 21 years old. 21 years old, because he was that freaking intelligent and knew how to get this done. That is the formula. Or at least that is my opinion of what the formula is to our liberation, of coming together.
There's been a couple of judicial rulings recently. I'm sure you're aware of. My girlfriend's quite upset because of this. She's quite highly involved, and we was talking about games from Steam, etc. She's had enough of life today, personally, from social media, and she posted this to me, and I'm going to read it out. You know who can't play games anymore? Sam DuBose, Philando Castile, Mike Brown, Tamir Rice, to name but a few. Now, I know Philando Castile and Sam DuBose rulings have gone in the police officers' favours, effectively, haven't they?
Yeah, the cops got off for murdering them,
on
Camera.
camera.
That's what people thought was going to change the game. We got body cameras now, so people will see when they murder us. It doesn't matter. It doesn't make a difference. It's just. Go ahead, then.
This Philando Castile, what more could he have done? I know the racists are like, oh, he shouldn't have done this, he shouldn't have done that. But if he was a white person, they'd be outraged right now. They'd be so outraged. Even the NRA hasn't even said anything. But if he was a white dude with a gun, in his pocket legally and did what you're supposed to do, which is tell the cop, I have a firearm, very calmly like he did, and that cop just flipped out. He saw a black dude in the car, and then already his prejudice kicked in. Then the guy told him he had a firearm, which he's legally required to do, so he's following the law in every way, shape, or form.
It's the Second Amendment.
And this stupid cop decides he's gonna, that triggers him or something, a black man with a gun now, his racism or something kicked in, and he decides he wants to start screaming and everything. It was ridiculous. I mean, and you can't find more of a model citizen than Philandro Castile. And the cops still got off.
They get off almost every time. This year it's been 100%. It's been 100% in Seattle for like a decade. This is what I'm saying. This is normal. If Ray Tensing had gotten off, it would have been a shock. I mean, if he had gotten convicted, it would have been a shock. It would have been a complete shock. If the dude who killed Philando got convicted, it would have been a shock. This is normal. I mean, and it goes. I mean, you go all the way back to the beginning. Killing black people, killing Native people, oppressing them is normal. It's okay. I go crazy when I hear colored people talk about the Constitution. That does not apply to us. It never has. It never will. Other than to oppress us, like the 13th Amendment. Of course, Ava DuVernay's documentary selling, like, the minute we got off the plantation and we're quote unquote free, they create a new policy. Hey, let's just create this thing, modern slavery, in prison industrial complex. So the law and order does not apply to us other than to hurt us. We don't have these rights, as people. Even Colin Kaepernick, the former quarterback of the 49ers, he was messed with by the cops, and if I remember correctly, held at gunpoint when he was quarterback for Nevada in college. LeBron James, other than Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, he's the most popular athlete in the United States. He had his home painted with the word nigger on it. He's worth like $500 million, whatever it is. So these rules don't apply to us, other than to hurt us. And we need to get it into our heads that the system has to go. That is our only chance. This lesser of two evil nonsense. Even back when it was Bernie Sanders. I mean, Bernie Sanders has committed genocide on multiple continents, and we're talking, oh, what a great man, great Bernie Sanders, wonderful man. He loves black people. He loves people. What in the what? What? No. But he was by far, compared to the other two people, Mr. Trump and Rodham Clinton, he was much better. But that's not an excuse. Can
you not call him Mr. Trump?
Fuhrer Trump, Snow Demon Trump. There's a Orange man. We're
having. I can't imagine what it's like in the United States of America at the minute. We are in the UK, and you can tell by my accent I'm UK. We're considering whether even to let them in the country.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And credit to the British people for pushing that hard.
He's scared to visit our country because of the protests. So what he's decided to do is set up some events in his favourable states to show the world how great he is on his own turf. But he won't come to the UK because protests.
Yeah, you know what you do is you download this right now and take it to Parliament and to Buckingham Palace. Watch out. Dear Parliament and Queen, do not let Trump into your country. He's a madman. We don't even want him in ours. That's it. This is Tim. All right, take that to him and you're all good.
We've got laws that we won't allow terrorists into the country by inciting racial hatred. We've banned Americans from this country for incitement to racial hatred. So why should we let a president in?
I agree with you fully.
I also agree. But that goes back to the forming of the United States. You have, I said it 2 weeks ago, one of the biggest...
No, I'd just like to interrupt because I'd like to rename your nation.
Go ahead.
You are the States of America. You are very not united.
Yeah. That is true. It hasn't been united since when Jamestown pilgrims came over here, it was 1513, whatever it was, or Turtle Island as a whole, 1492. But that goes back to the beginning here. America, or the colonies, wanted to continue slavery, continued Western expansion, aka native genocide, and then the Brits were like, "Whoa, we both got enough money. We definitely got enough land. We don't want to do that." And that was one of the reasons why y'all fought. Of course, that again is not taught in schools or let alone by the media, which again is why we got to put that out into the populace and actually have the truth told. So, and even taking colored people out of it, women, transgender people, gay people can be free and not worry. Like trans women are, when a trans woman walks outside in the United States, they're at more risk to be harmed than an active service member in battle in a war zone as a United States service member. So, we have to change the narrative, and it has to be from the oppressed people in this country.
I totally agree. It has to be the press. Now, we've got a similar issue in the UK. The majority of our... we've had a massive uptake in racial crime. Now, our politicians haven't helped the situation, but our media has amplified any tiny message of racism or Islamophobia or homophobia. Our media amplifies it. I think at the heart of everything, we need to start addressing our media. When our media starts changing the narrative, the politicians do. And that has actually been proven with Jeremy Corbyn for the Labour Party running recently. Now, I'm not here to advocate Jeremy Corbyn, but when you change the narrative in the media, the public opinion changes. The media holds a lot of sway. So do we have Islamophobia? Do we have homophobia? Do we have racism in our country? Look at the media. They are to blame, and it's them we have to focus on, because our politicians just do it as the fucking public will tells them.
Well, you're exactly right. I mean, how many trans people are news anchors? None, at least in this country. And
there's never been a transphobic terrorist attack, is there?
Not that I know of. But that they are part of a group of people, trans people. Almost half of them attempt suicide in their lifetime, and yet they're not allowed to have a voice.
Exactly.
That's the whole. Yeah, that's the whole crux of the issue right there.
When you change the narrative of the media, you watch how quick your politicians follow.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's why Hillary was talking about having hot sauce in her bag, and who knows how much money she paid Beyonce and Jay-Z to vouch for her and endorse her. Beyonce to perform at one of her events. That's why Bernie was pushed aside and illegally kicked out of the election, or had to drop out of the election. You had Hillary plants on so many networks and news publications. You had Trump plants. The way this media in so many the countries we're talking about, Canada, the UK, and the U.S. colonial countries, Western society, white countries, it's absolutely astounding. I mean, again, you have networks in this country go out of their way to defend the police, which is a terrorist organization, as a whole construct of all the police departments in the country. The FBI. I don't watch mainstream media. I haven't in about a year or so, but I do see the tweets and some of the articles, and they're defending the FBI. I mean, there's a way to Comey shouldn't have gotten fired. There was collusion, Trump and Russia, fine, but do not defend an organization that murdered Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, and to this day oppresses and kills colored people. I mean, that's
how does the government get its message out? It's through the media. What if we've been focusing on the wrong target all along? What if we all focused on the media and the narrative that they're producing? If they're producing a narrative that's not conducive to society, why don't we shut them down? Why the politicians that are being fed and given the platforms? Just look at Milo, fucking idiot, for example. Imagine if we shut these media because they're not free speech. Their opinion in their own narrative of the law. That's why Fox News can get away with what it does. And let's take it back to the financial crisis and the insurance agency. You know, the credit rating agencies. This was just our opinion just before the financial crisis collapsed. What if we're in the midst of a political, societal crisis, and all of the media just said, well, it was just our opinion. That's all they're espousing is their opinion. Why don't we go after and attack the media that's not conducive to society? The media that foments hate, foments racism. What if we're focusing on the politicians that are actually just following the media narrative? What if we've been duped all along?
Well, that's a good. There's a lot behind that theory, because that is how politicians become powerful and known, is through the media. I mean, exactly. That's why super PACs exist, is so they can get their name out, get some positive press, and go run for office. But
for every politician, there's 4 media spin doctors.
Just about, yeah. If you watch Fox, you see a bunch of just awful Republicans coming on and talking about their racism and what should happen and their sexism and this, that. And then if you flip to MSNBC, there's the covert racism and the covert sexism and the covert selling out of depending on who is on that night, whether it's Liz Warren, who continues to pretend to be Cherokee and a native and has never apologized or said she was lying and has been lying, Kamala Harris, who has supported Donald Trump, Bernie Sanders, who said, and I quote, "I'm excited to work with Trump," and yet there's this the resist thing. I can't stand that. I mean, this is white liberal BS. What are you resisting? They're resisting white comfort. They're resisting the threat to their white comfort. The threat that, oh wait, America doesn't look so perfect anymore because you have this wannabe neo-Nazi in office and making hate crimes go up and allowing white trash to just skyrocket all over the country, and that has to go. All that has to go.
I'll give you one example of exactly why targeting politics and politicians doesn't work in the UK. If you get an online petition together, because this is the internet generation, if you have an online petition that gains 100,000 votes in the UK, they have to discuss it in Parliament. So a lot of people invest time to think they're making a change, something important to them, and they get, say, 100,000, 200,000, 300,000, 400,000, 500,000 signatures to this petition that gets brought to the House of Commons, and it has to be negotiated. Guess what? It's only advisory. They don't have to. The politicians don't have to make a decision. Now, if that's something important on a race issue, the media's espouting hate and race division, and they can get away with it scot-free, but you're wasting your time to the tune of 500,000 votes to politicians that can't actually do anything. The media should be our focus. And guess what? I noticed a flaw in Anonymous since the very beginning, is that the free press should not be attacked. The press should have free reign. But the press isn't free. The people that own the press have an agenda. They always have financial interest to divide society.
Yeah, I think I think the media should have the same respect or disrespect as the politicians and corporations that they all work hand in hand with. Corporations own both of them, as Glen had just said not that long ago.
Exactly. Why should a press organisation that's owned by an offshore tax haven or individual that's avoiding tax in the country have a say in the political narrative of that nation state on how the health service works? Exactly. That's not a free press. That's political deviation. That's political influence for their own benefit.
I think for independent, it's fine, and no one should attack independent journalists, for what they're trying to do. But those mega media outlets, they're no better than they're all part of the problem.
They are part of the problem. So why are they left to have free reign? Why are these not people under scrutiny? Why are activists saying, "Oh, we're not going to attack the press," when they're not free? They're not free. They're politically and financially constrained according to the owner and the narrative. You look, as you said, look at Fox News. Now, this shouldn't be anything new. I just think we're wasting our time on attacking and petitioning our politicians.
Well, yeah, but in this... Go ahead, Nolan, sorry.
Especially since they have no interest in changing the core of these colonizing countries. I mean, they want it this way. That's, again, what people don't understand. They don't understand. They want it this way. They want to continue it this way. That's one reason why Donald Trump won, because, oh, wait, you're a black president and there's more colored people? Oh, no, go backwards. No, go backwards. Theresa May, all Muslims are awful. Oh, no, we need her. Get her and up,
Exactly. I don't know if you know, Nolan, but Theresa May was Home Secretary. We had vans driving around the UK with big triangle adverts on the back of these vans. They were like 15 feet tall, saying, "Are you legally allowed in this country? If not, phone this number to be returned to your home nation."
Wow.
Yeah.
Jeez. Oh, what I was going to say.
But that's the narrative of this country for the last 7 years. So migrants are now classed as bad, and yet migrants, our doctors, our carers, our fruit pickers. Guess what? We're going to have a shortage of seasonal fruit pickers here in the UK that come over and do the jobs that indigenous white people won't do, we're going to run out of food.
Yeah, the same thing's going on here with field workers.
Exactly.
And I think all these racist white people who hate immigrants so much should send their kids out to the field to pick strawberries and dig and do all that hard work for very, very little money. Because, you know, they say that...
I'd also send politicians' children into compulsory service in the military, yes.
No, I'd send them on the front lines. On the front line. If you're supporting the war, you should be willing to have your family die for that war before anybody else.
If you are at war, then send those politicians' children to war. And Israel have a conscription service, same as Singapore. All children enter into the military. It's a service to the public. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing for defense, and that's the problem that I've got is so much. How much do you guys in the America spend in your defense budget, but it's actually offense? Does anyone know that figure?
Enough to probably end homelessness and cure cancer.
Yeah.
Offense, attack is not a defense budget, surely. It shouldn't be classed the same. It should have... Well, we can data mine all the information that we can on Earth. We've got quantum computers now that transact billions of bits of information per second, and yet we cannot differentiate a defense budget from an offense budget. Why not?
What are we defending from? We're always on the offense.
Yeah. But then there's the narrative, war on terror. We have to protect ourselves from ISIS, even though the U.S. government created ISIS in the first place?
Surely you should, if you wanted to sell it to the public, and I don't mean to be detrimental to you guys in America, but it should be the defense of terror. The defense against terror, the protection of terror. So how to stop attacks against us, not a war on an ideology. It's like the war on drugs. Why not a defense of the damage of drugs on society? It's the narrative by small-minded politicians that are sold by the media. The media fucking lapped it up. It's a headline. The war on terror. What better headline to make America seem strong and powerful? Was there any actual policy or direction, an end game to the war on drugs when it was announced? Did the media even question what? Where was the journalist saying, okay, we've got a war on drugs, so when's this going to end? Any idea? How much is it going to cost? Where was the journalistic integrity from our media on this war? There wasn't any. Our media is at fault, and our politicians know they can they can say anything as a soundbite. If they're not questioned, they just need the journalists just need a headline. We need to start challenging the media organisations that allow us to invoke wars without end or capital for sustainability. Where's the end game? We're starting to understand these narratives now, and we know where we've been led before, so we're not falling for it so easy. That's why Barack Obama never went into Syria, because there was no end narrative like the Iraq War and Afghanistan War, which we're still involved in.
Well, he still continued the presence in both Iraq and Afghanistan, even though he promised to get troops out of there and the wars there. But it's hard to stop something when you created it, at least talking about the country I live in. I mean, in the 80s, America spent a fortune supplying Afghani school children with textbooks that featured violent images and militant Islamic teachings. And people are like, well, where did the Islamic extremism come from? I have no idea. Where did ISIS come from? I mean, America's funded the Taliban, Al-Qaeda, ISIS. if you want to stop this stuff, stop creating it and keep funding it, and then you're killing innocent Arab people, a lot of whom are obviously Muslim. They're going to get angry because you're killing innocent people, and then they join extremist groups to fight terrorism, Christian extremism or white extremism by the United States. So we have to understand the cause and effect also, and
we do. But what we also need to understand is what us as white Christian democracies involved ourselves in, and it's an age-old Shia Sunni conflict. We just exacerbated it with weapons, but beyond these guys could ever imagine. We just threw ultimate amounts of money and resource into a Sunni Shia conflict that we didn't even comprehend. Do you know what we did after? Do you know what you guys did after the Iraq War? When you took out Saddam Hussein, you sent in an administrator to Iraq. There was billions of dollars being airdropped regionally into Iraq, pallets of money to be taken by people that you just sacked because you dissolved all the institutions in Iraq. Mm-hmm. And that's how ISIS died. Everyone said, oh, they're driving around in Toyotas. Yeah, American money paid for it because you were shipping it in on pallets.
Yeah, there's billions of dollars that America has of military equipment that has found its way to ISIS indirectly or directly. So, but then again, war on terror by the media, from the government, just like the war on drugs with black and brown folks in the 70s. Media go, oh, Nixon's just trying to solve the drug problem, when in actuality he wanted to kill and imprison more colored people. So
at the end of it, if the media didn't sell a politician's policies and did their job properly, you wouldn't have half the issues you have in America if your media was responsible. It's actually starting to pick up. I will give you guys that. It's starting to pick up every now and then. The Watergate, for example, but that's historically. But it's starting to pick up, but I don't think it's enough. The media has to do its job. Everyone says remove money from politics. I'll tell you what you need to do as well, and that's remove private interest from media. The press is not free. On that note, I think I've said enough.
I think we've gone. We're right at the ending point, but we need to end media as we know it, and actually put out news that is actually news and factual, and not biased or bigoted, and just say what is truth and what is reality. I'll just end my talking points at that.
I'm just going to say the media is more dangerous than politics ever is, because there'd be no politics if the media didn't support it.
I agree.
Yeah, the media is the voice of the politicians. A lot of times the free voice of the politicians.
Look how much free airtime Donald Trump got in this campaign.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Free airtime. He got billions.
Mm-hmm.
But they all get it. All the presidential candidates get it. He just was such a buffoon. It was kind of unprecedented. People hadn't seen somebody act like that for.
It was a clown show. Yeah, it was like a car crash. People couldn't look away, but they needed to look away.
8-year-old running for president, talking about just crazy stuff. So of course they're going to cover that. It gets ratings.
Yes, it does, and he knew exactly what he was doing.
Still waiting for Mexico to build that wall.
I want to make my local paper tomorrow, so I'm going to go out and ride naked on my bike. That's going to generate local news. Okay. That's how politics is today, guys.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
On that note, I love you. Thank you so much, Nolan, Tim. Bless you. Thank you.
Top.
Right back,
Nolan. Thank you
have a good
to
weekend.
our 16 people listening. See you guys next week. And we're out.